In this video, I'm going to show images and video footage taken during a recent bird photography trip to North Norfolk. North Norfolk is one of the most well-known areas for birds in the UK, and because of the huge range of birds found there, it attracts bird watchers and bird photographers from all over the country. I stayed for 4 days, and over that time I photographed over 30 different types of birds, a real testament to how good North Norfolk is for bird photography. One spectacle that I've always wanted to photograph is the Wer Roost at Snettisham. These large Wer Roosts only occur on the highest spring tides, and you can find out when they are by consulting published tide tables or the RSPB website. In the early part of the year, you do not see the huge numbers of birds that this spectacle draws in the winter, but there were still thousands of birds: knot, oyster catchers, redshank, dunlin, avocets, turnstones and gulls. The noise the birds make is amazing, and gradually, as the tide in the estuary draws in, the birds will start to flock into the pool. I photographed from one of the hides at the south end of the pit, and initially I tried to shoot stills, but I found it quite difficult with a still image to convey the vast amount of birds and the noise they make. Video is a lot better medium for this, and shooting video is something I find myself doing more and more. In this clip you can see the masses of knots and how closely packed together they are, and how they all seem to move en masse as more birds fly in. After a while a peregrine flew in and all the birds took off and swirled around. I had the OM1 Mark II and the 150 to 400mm on a tripod and just left it filming video while I tried to take stills with the OM1 and the 40 to 150 with the 1.4 converter. The video footage was shot in slow motion at 120 frames per second, and the noise the birds make has been dubbed in afterwards. RSB Titchwell is probably one of the best known locations in North Norfolk to photograph birds. Here you can photograph birds in the lagoons from the public hides, as well as photographing birds on the mud flat from along the track. On arrival at Titchwell's visitor centre, I was told that a small flock of waxwing had been seen near the reserve entrance. The waxwings were quite easy to spot because of the number of people watching and photographing them. They certainly did not seem to be bothered about people and continued to feed on the berries in the trees. Getting shots of waxwing was something completely unexpected on this trip, so I was pleased to get some very nice stills using the 150 to 400 with the 125 extender. Walking onto the reserve, the first hide you come to is the island hide, which has just been rebuilt. The window openings are quite large and easy to photograph from. Here I photographed avocets, black-tailed godwits, as well as pintail ducks, shoveler and shelduck. Walking out along the track towards the beach, there is an area of mud flats on the right hand side, and often birds can come close enough to the edges of this to photograph. Here I photographed redshank and curlew. From this position I was quite pleased to get this footage of a curlew feeding in the mud. You can see how far down they push that long curved beak to obtain the food. Also, this black-tailed godwit seemed quite happy looking for food in the mud. This clip also shows how deep they can probe that long beak. Here it finds something, shakes the mud off and then eats it. A good area to photograph waders is on the shoreline at Titchwell, although birds like sanderling, oyster catchers curlew and turnstones can be found pretty much anywhere along the Norfolk coast. Sanderlings are small birds that tend to run at amazing speed along the shoreline. They rarely stand still and pose for you, so you need a fast shutter speed and quick reactions to photograph them. Photographing groups of flying birds along the shoreline is quite a challenge, but with perseverance it can be done. I was pleased with this shot of a lapwing as it flew past me. I saw it flying in from the right hand side and locked onto it with the autofocus. I then just hit the shutter button and panned with it as it flew past. It's more difficult to photograph birds when they fly directly towards you, so I was very pleased with this shot of a turnstone in flight. Turnstones are quite small birds, difficult to photograph in flight, and especially so when flying directly towards you as in this shot. Cley is well known for being one of the best bird reserves in the UK and famous for the vast range of birds that can be seen there. I have found the Bishop's Hide to be particularly good, and often birds will come very close indeed. There is a bank of grass a short distance in front of the hide, and this snipe kept me entertained for a good 10 to 15 minutes. It was moving about for a lot of the time, which was not a problem when shooting stills, but more difficult when trying to shoot video. It would occasionally stay in one place, which allowed me to shoot some pleasing footage. Also, this pied wagtail came onto the nearside bank as well. Shooting video of the wagtail was very difficult because it was constantly running about looking for food. Wagtails are a bit like clockwork mice. They are going about all over the place at high speed. In the end, I just gave up trying to shoot video and concentrated on shooting stills. Also, this oyster catcher came onto the nearside bank as well. Once I got a few stills that I was happy with, I then switched over to shooting video, and I tend to usually shoot stills first. Once I've got a few of those in the bag that I'm happy with, then I'll go on to shooting video. This video clip of the oyster catcher was shot at 120 frames per second, which is slow motion, 5 times slow. Cley is particularly well known for marsh harriers, and they are often seen flying over the reed beds. These shots were taken again from the Bishop's Hide, and the harriers were some distance away, so these images are quite large crops. They did occasionally come closer, but unfortunately I was not fast enough to get them in the viewfinder. This shot was a food pass between male and female, and because of the distance it is quite a heavy crop. There was lots of activity in front of the hide with lots of birds fighting, particularly the godwits. Sometimes this happened quite close, other times at quite a distance away, and this is where the advantage of a long focal length zoom really comes into the fore. I was also lucky to get shots and video footage of this spoonbill, although again it was some distance away. It would have been good to have tested out the OM Systems 150 to 600mm at this location, but unfortunately it had been returned by then. At this location the 150 to 600mm would have been an ideal focal length. Some of the other birds I photographed at Cley were greylag geese, Egyptian geese, avocets, redshank, black-tailed godwits, male widgeon, and in this shot both male and female widgeon together. I'm going to finish the video showing shots of a barn owl in flight. One particular bird that I was keen to photograph on the trip was a barn owl, and certainly these shots were, for me, the highlight of the trip. Norfolk has probably one of the largest populations of barn owls anywhere in the UK, and fortunately I was lucky enough to find one that flew close enough to me to obtain some decent shots. It certainly did not seem to be bothered by me at all, and at times flew quite close, which enabled me to get some nice frame filling shots. In this shot, the barn owl is dropping down to catch prey. On this occasion it wasn't successful and didn't catch anything. It then sat in the meadow, looking left and right with its head above the grass, before finally flying off. Occasionally you may be lucky to see a barn owl flying during the middle of the day, but generally speaking the best times to see barn owls are either early morning and or late evening. The only problem with that is in order to get a fast enough shutter speed to stop an owl in flight, you do need to increase the ISO. So consequently, these images were taken at a higher ISO than I would ideally have liked. Having said that, I was quite pleased with the results. Please do not ask me for the location of where I photographed the barn owl. It's important that these birds are not disturbed, and I'm not comfortable disclosing the location. As I mentioned at the start of the video, during the 4 days of the trip I photographed over 30 different types of birds, and from my point of view this made it not only a very enjoyable few days, but also a very productive trip. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. Thanks for watching.